Hello, hello. This is Jeffrey from Love and Other Arts. I'm here to share with you today 5 thoughts on love. Each of these thoughts is from a different source. They've all had an impact on me and my thinking and way of living, and I hope that they can be just as impactful for others as well. So the sources we're going to talk about today are Jesus, the poet Elizabeth Barrett Browning, activist Martin Luther King Jr., German philosopher Erich Fromm, and pancakes? Actually, the pancakes are there to represent the film Dan in Real Life. I wasn't sure about the copyright ramifications of using a film cover in the video, so I just went with a similar enough image in its place. As an added bonus, we now have this lovely collage that I made where our first 4 thinkers all seem to be hungrily eyeing a plate of pancakes. Yum yum. So, we'll begin with a thought from Jesus, one that I'm sure everyone has heard before. Jesus said unto him, Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. This is the first and great commandment, and the second is like unto it. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Jesus says that we are commanded to love. This reveals something that may be surprising to many about the nature of love. Love is not a feeling. Here's how I can tell. People don't have feelings on command. It's pointless to command someone to be sad or happy or angry because they don't have power over that. Similarly, if love were a feeling, there would be no point in Jesus commanding someone to love. Later in the video, I'll talk about what love actually is, but for now, it's enough to know that love, at least as Jesus understood it, cannot possibly be a feeling. Let's jump forward about 1800 years to our next thought, which is from Elizabeth Barrett Browning. Browning isn't nearly the household name that Jesus is, and that's a little sad. Browning is a brilliant poet who is still taught in literature programs and was very much a celebrity in her time. Browning is here giving some of the best advice I've ever heard on how to have love that lasts. If thou must love me, let it be for naught except for love's sake only. The secret is not to love someone for some quality or reason, because those things might change, and then your love will be over. For instance, if I love someone because they have youthful beauty, what will happen to my love when they get old? Or even in a less shallow example, if I love someone because they are intelligent, what happens to my love if the person loses that intelligence to a brain injury? Instead, Browning advises love for the sake of love, or loving simply because I find value in loving. From Jesus to Browning, we jumped almost 2,000 years, but we only need to hop about 200 years for our next thinker, Martin Luther King Jr. King says in one of his sermons, "Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that." In our first thought, Jesus asserted that the commandments to love were the most important commandments. We might be inclined to ask, but why is love so important? King here is giving us a big part of the answer. Love is the only thing that can drive out hate. Hate in this sense is once again not a feeling, nor is it an intense dislike. Neither of those things need to be driven out. They both have their uses. Hate here can most easily and accurately be understood as the desire for someone's harm. Love, hate's opposite, can be understood as the desire for someone's well-being. So a less concise, but perhaps clearer way to express King's thoughts would be, if someone seeks to harm you, and in turn you seek to harm them, then you give that person even more reason to seek your harm. But if someone seeks to harm you, and you instead seek to benefit them, you may give them a reason to seek to benefit you. Our next thought comes from a less well-known thinker from the same time as King. German philosopher and social scientist Erich Fromm. In his book, The Art of Loving, Fromm writes, "Love is the only sane and satisfactory answer to the problem of human existence." What does Fromm mean by the problem of human existence? Fromm means that each of us is fundamentally isolated. At best, this isolation generates loneliness and alienation, and at its worst, it creates tribalism and hatred. Fromm, like King, sees love as the solution to this problem. And not just any love, but the kind of love that Browning described, a love which is for its own sake. Our last source is much more recent and comes from more of a pop culture direction. Specifically, it's from the film Dan in Real Life. There's a line in the film that answers a question that we've had on the back burner since Jesus' commandments. And that question is, what is love? The answer that the film offers is, love isn't a feeling, it's an ability. We had already deduced that love was not a feeling, and now we have something we can say that love is, an ability. This brings me to the whole point of love and other arts. My aim is to teach people the ability to love, and to help people recognize that people who don't love aren't merely bad, rotten people. They are people missing an ability, but it's an ability that can be taught. And if a person can love, that ability can always be trained stronger, just like a physical ability or an art. The world is full of hate and isolation, but if we learn how to practice and improve our ability to love, purely for love's sake, we can make things so much better. And it may be the most important thing we can pursue. And now, I think I'm going to go make some pancakes.